It's the credit card company. Emails me when there's a charge.
Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for joining us. We'll just quickly go around and introduce ourselves. Welcome back, everybody, to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is Tuesday, March 31st, and we are kind of starting to wrap up our initial round of testimony on S202, an act relating to portable solar energy generation devices. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Cluffner, Tidman 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Great. All right. Well, Chris, thanks for joining us. If you could just identify yourself for the record, and then we are anxious to hear your thoughts on S202.
Absolutely. So for the record, my name is Chris Doobie, President of the Professional Firefighters of Vermont. We represent the 13 full-time IAFF unionized organized fire departments in the state. I retired about a year and a half ago from the Hartford, Vermont Fire Department with 32 and a half years experience on that organization as a captain. I'm happy to speak on this. I realize it's emerging technology. Some people are eager to hear the pros and the cons. And I'm going to give you the perspective from the International Association of Firefighters. And our biggest concern, no doubt, is the safety of these devices. As you're aware, oftentimes technology moves faster than regulations, rules, or standards. And I think this is a classic example of that. So I did send your assistant my overview of what I'm going to testify on. So I'll just go through it real quick. And if you have questions, if I can't answer it, I guarantee you I'll get you an answer within a day or so. I apologize for not being there in person. Typically, you might have seen me strolling around the State House. I spend a fair amount of time, but I'm actually out in Vegas at a leadership seminar for the week. So I'm kind of bouncing around. So yeah, the first thing I'll start with is originally these devices were designed, as I say, portable devices for outdoor activities and recreation. At some point, somebody figured out, hey, I can plug this into an outlet and kind of, you feed my house and save me some energy. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but as we all know, that sometimes you jump ahead a little bit, you're doing something that looks good on the surface, but it doesn't make it necessarily safe. So like I said, these were designed for, low energy devices like a small appliance, charge a radio maybe, or whatever, when you're out camping or off the grid, or, and even in an extreme circumstance like you're without power for 2 or 3 days, you could, hopefully power some of your more vital essential items with that. At some point it did morph in, hey, maybe I can plug it into an outlet and save me some cost on electricity, which wasn't the initial intent of these devices. It's important to understand that there's no plug-in or we'll call it balcony photovoltaic systems that are currently UL certified. I don't know how much Director DeRozier or others have gotten into the difference between UL testing or UL compared to UL certified or UL listed. The testing, as you know, is just a component of that device has been tested to meet the standard device as a complete setup. If it has the UL certified or the UL listing, it means that device, the whole device as a complete unit, met the more stringent safety requirements. A much higher standard, much tougher to obtain, but it is pretty much the gold standard. That's what we want in this industry, something that is UL certified or UL listed, to know that it is safe for the consumers, it's safe for us if we have to interface with it and so forth. So none of these devices currently meet that standard, that UL certified standard. As you can see in my testimony, there is a link to that. I don't know if you've seen it before. If not, please, cut and copy that, ul.com, the insights on the safety with these devices. And it's a white paper that was developed by United Labs to educate the AHJs or the authorities having jurisdictions on the unique hazard of these photovoltaic systems and how they differ from the traditional ones we've seen on roof houses, maybe in solar fields. And so they're completely different devices. and to try to distinguish the difference between them. And with that, as I said, there's Utah, this is emerging technology. And so the IFF is trying to gather as much info as we can from the US and Canada on this as it comes out, on what we're seeing and how we can address our concerns with it. I gave you a link to the Utah bill. That's the one that they kind of referenced, that the stuff is highlighted in there. And the thing I liked about that when I read through it is that it specifically says they're not banning these, but to be sold in the state of Utah, it has to have that UL certified and meet the National Electrical Code standards, the NEC standards, which I think is something that Vermont needs to look at to make it truly safe for the end consumer. So we're not putting products out there that are, causing fires, causing electrical shock hazards to the individuals using them and so forth. And as I go through our specific concerns with these and why we think they're a bad idea at this time and until these issues get resolved, is first that there's zero certification out there for them yet. So this is, like I say, this is a classic example of where technology is moving faster than the safety standards or the laws or so forth put forth. So once they have that, the framework is there, but nothing has been tested yet. Not saying that, 6 months, a year from now, that they do develop these criteria and these devices are meeting these standards, and yeah, that's cool. They're safe. We know they are. We have no problem with that. Some of the issues we see in Vermont, like with the harsh winters and so forth, they have an effect on these devices, causing them to break down, expose the wires more frequently, causing a shock hazard, which we are, it's a concern to us if we have to go there and deal with these, if they're over smoking and so forth. It's also our concern that the consumers using these, we're going to see more issues related to shock hazards where, on the EMS side, we're responding more incidents of people facing these injuries as a result of a device that isn't designed or being used for, it's not intended to be designed to use for. Like I said, the touch safety, people grabbing prongs, the GFC interface, I believe that when Director DeRozier and the electrical inspector spoke on that, they've had issues in Vermont of people, plugging these into electrical outlets that aren't properly wired the way they should be, where they're starting to see that, they had an incident where one was melted. So I think as these become more prevalent, we may see more of those, which is obviously a concern on the safety side for us. So we would like to see that the state follow pretty much what Utah did and mandate that if they're going to be sold in Vermont, they meet the most current NEC standard from the National Fire Protection. And they're also UL certified, not just UL tested, but they're certified and meet the standard as a whole. This whole, the panel, the wiring, the storage device, all these have been tested as a complete component, and they are truly safe, and they're not going to be a fire hazard or an electrical shock hazard risk out there to the consumers. So like I said, we realize this is emerging technology. We're not against it. We just want to make sure that the proper legislation is put in place. So we're not putting a product out there where 6 months, 12 months down the road, we start to see an increase in fires, possibly an increase in people getting electrical shocks from these. And God knows what other issues are out there. So I know that was kind of quick and in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any questions and go from there. So.
Great. Questions? Yeah, Rep. Southworth?
From a firefighter standpoint, if one of these is installed on a house, what hazards do they pose to you as far as producing electricity, even though it's unplugged from an outlet? Is that possible to cause you issues with firefighting?
So it is. So whether it's plugged into an outlet or not, as long as it's receiving light, sunlight. So whenever there's daylight, these panels, whether they're these portable ones or even the fixed ones on the roof, whenever there's sunlight out there, always generating power. So I know the installation with the residential ones have it's a requirement on disconnects and all that. These portable ones may not have that. So as long as there's daylight or any light, I think, I've heard, I haven't seen it personally, but I've heard research and studies done it, even say floodlights at night when you're lighting up an area, that will still produce enough light energy that it'll generate the DC on these photovoltaic cells. So our philosophy is whenever there's daylight, no matter if it's plugged in or not, those are still hot and still generating power, no matter what. So they'd have to be covered. And that's another whole issue to get into, and how you cover them, make sure that it truly is de-energized. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, as long as it's daylight, they're always hot.
All right, thank you.
Rep. Howland?
When the rooftop systems first came out, in the old CVPS territory, they required a disconnect, a low breakable rated disconnect switch. I don't know about the Green Mountain Power territory. Are they still required in new rooftop photovoltaics to have a disconnect switch?
So I'm not an expert on the codes, but it's my understanding from taking classes that yes, they do now mandate that when you put these systems in, that there's a way to disconnect that, so it doesn't, if there's an issue, it's not back feeding into the system per se. It's also, to a degree, it's there for the safety of us. But that's another area that, I mean, I don't want to dive too deep, but that's another area that we kind of fail on the fire side, especially in the state of training our members that, so even though that disconnect is off, if you have to go up onto the roof, those panels still are energized, you know, until you cover them, and not with the plastic tarps. They recommend you use like we have these more heavier duty, like it's a cloth tarp that's covered with a neoprene membrane, so they're really thick, and that way light can't penetrate them. And that's another whole training issue. You know, if you use those blue tarps you get at Kmart, enough light still permeates through that it still energizes that. So there is some stuff there to disconnect it, but if you're ever up on the roof itself and those still daylight, those panels are still, you know, from the panel down to where that disconnect is, there's still energy in that realm of it. So
I was referring more to the energy flowing back into the distribution system of the house.
so most of them, the newest systems do have disconnects on there. I say that with a high degree of certainty. Yes, I think that the new code addressed that hey, we want to shut it off here, but that could be, you know, coming down to the building where that socket is. So from that point on, it's not feeding it, but from that point up to the roof, if you follow me, still has energy in it, which is a concern if we have to operate on the roof. Say we have to go up there for, you know, whatever, but
Right.
It's not 100% de-energized, but at least we can isolate going into the house and going back to the grid is isolated.
Chris, whether it's one of these little plug-in balcony solars or a rooftop solar array, I assume the fact that they're energized is something that you're training your firefighters on.
Do offer training. I can't say with 100% certainty that every department is training our members on that. We do try to offer it, but that is certainly an area that we've probably fallen a little short in. But again, I think it's one of those, especially with these portable ones, that technology is moving quicker than we can catch up with it. Like I said, initially these were designed for, you know, people out camping. You know, you put this up so you could run a little cooler, say, to keep something chilled, your food or whatever, to, hey, I can plug it into my house and, you know, maybe power my television or whatever and save a little bit of money on that side. And that's, again, not what they're intended for. I'm not saying they can't be used for that, but we're just saying, let's test it to make sure that this is safe and that we're doing it correctly.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm just, you know, looking over your testimony, which I appreciate, and it seems, I guess, how I'm approaching this bill is the general thought that as you point out right now, uncertified, you know, totally unregulated devices are available on Amazon, and any Vermonter could hop online and buy one of these and plug it in. And I'm feeling the need to have proactive legislation that makes it clear that if you buy one of these in Vermont, it does have to be UL certified, and this is how you do it safely. And if you don't, you're breaking state law.
That's 100% correct. That's our stance on it, that, you know, we can't, and I get it, it's hard, you know, you can't dictate what people buy and consumers because they can go across the border. But if it's going to be in the state, we support these, but we want them to make sure that they're safe. And to meet that, we want them to be UL certified or UL listed, not UL tested. That way we know the whole device is safe. And also that it meets, you know, if you're going to use it in that capacity, that it meets the most current NFPA National Electrical Standard, that you have that special outlet that the electrical guy spoke about, and it's a separate circuit designed to backfeed. So it is truly safe, not just for us operating as firefighters and so forth, but also for you as the consumers that, you're not going to burn your house down. You have a small smoldering fire that starts at 6 in the evening and you don't know about it till 9 o'clock when you're in bed. To me, it's kind of scary and kind of not what we're there for. We want to make sure that it's safe for all people in Vermont.
We've been taking a lot of testimony, and we have at this point a bunch of, I think, really good suggestions about, bits and pieces we need to add to the bill to make sure that, it is following all these recommendations. And so it seems to me that it might be important to make sure that once we do a markup and add all these things, that we get it out to folks who've testified to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Yeah, and
So
if I could,
we'll make sure you have a chance to see the bill.
and I appreciate that. And the one thing I'll add on that, like I said, and I don't know if you've invited him in yet, but like I put a little blurb in there about, when I think if these come out and they're not certified, that you're going to see an increase in potentially building fires. And I'd be curious to see what the insurance industry, how they weigh in on this, I mean, because these aren't, like I said, they're not at this point really designed or intended for what they want. And you're absolutely right. The market could be flooded with cheaper imposter products from other countries that don't have the standards we do. And the next you're starting to see a rash of incidents involving these devices because we didn't address it properly on the front side. And that's why I say, I mean, to be curious to hear what the insurance companies have for concerns with these also. So.
Great. Sounds good.
All right. I appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day now.
So this is about when the portable gas grills first came out, that where you could get a 14-ounce can of propane and
Yeah.
screw it in, and the apartment complexes and condos, they chase you out off property while you're bringing it into your rented condo. And I go on vacation, they wouldn't allow a propane
Oh, right.
on the balcony of the condo. And matter of fact, they go down and use their gas grill at some other place.
The charcoal was better.
But I don't, well, as long as you got a concrete deck, you don't have to worry. But charcoal on a wood deck burns and it escapes.
All right. Well,
It does bring up an interesting point though about the insurance industry, getting their point of view.
yeah, I just found the Vermont Insurance Agents Association. I'm looking to see if I recognize anybody as like,
Would it be in the underwriters association or
There's a lobbyist.
agent
Yeah, just-
association?
Lobbyist is. Yeah.
Alex is our next guest in the waiting room.
No,
We're
we're
done.
not today.
We're done.
so we've got on 202, we've got markup scheduled on Thursday. And I definitely am going to need to go back through all of our testimony and try to make a more succinct list of all the recommendations we've heard on the bill. And if other folks could do that too, that would be helpful. So we've got markup Thursday at 9, and our task there should be to try to read back over all this testimony and create like a succinct list of all the suggestions we've had about, things to add to the bill around kind of safety and consumer protection. And then we're hearing from VPIRG and VNRC on Friday, and I think they're going to bring the unit in, which I'm kind of excited to see one. And we'll see if we can get the insurance agents in here. And then, so I guess by the end of the week, we should be able to know where we're at with S202. And then the whole rest of the week is devoted mostly to CPACE and then to learn a little bit about the Energy Navigators bill that came over from the Senate. Right, I think we can go up live, actually.